Welcome to The Golf Course, a modern forum for business conversations in insurance. I'm your host, Carrie Ann Nadeau, founder and CEO of ODN. Today on The Golf Course, I'm joined by CEO and founder of Parento, Dirk Dobler. Dirk and I chat about the importance of paid parental leave insurance and the broader implications of new product development that meet millennials and satisfy the demands of new parents in the insurance marketplace. Let's tee it off.
Thanks so much for having me.
Happy to have you here. As a fellow entrepreneur, I interact with a lot of fellow founders and CEOs, just getting to know their business. I'll say Parento has always stood out for me as something really special. So thank you for giving us the privilege to get to know your company and spread the word a little bit more about what you do. Why don't we start there? Could you tell the audience a little bit more about Parento? What is it that you provide?
Yeah, so we are looking to be the go-to paid maternity and paternity leave provider out there. We offer an insurance to companies to help them afford to offer paid parental leave benefits to their employees. We work with the employer to set up a parental leave policy of their choosing and that is compliant with various regulations. And then we set up a monthly premium that the employer pays to us like any other insurance. And then we reimburse the employer for salary expenses when employees take parental leave, giving the employer's cost certainty and risk management like typical insurance, but helping HR with leave administration. That's a real nightmare for them right now.
Wow. So essentially the gap that you're filling is that people who get pregnant, either women or men who are starting families, currently, what do they do when they have a baby? I mean, I'm not sure everybody's thought through how this works today.
Yeah, so if you're one of the 17% of Americans with paid parental leave to your employer, you are going to have your child and receive a paycheck while you're out of work, typically anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks of time, depending on how much time your employer offers. But if you're like the rest of Americans, you probably have no paid time off through your employer, and you're going to have a child, and you're going to use all of your PTO and sick days to go back before you go back to work, usually by week 8. The only about a quarter of Americans actually take more than 9 weeks. And for the even more lucky, you maybe have short-term disability insurance, but that's only for birth mothers. And on average, they're going to receive about 50% of pay for 6 weeks. And then need to use their PTO to stay out of work for a little bit longer. So what we really see is the vast majority of Americans are going back to work way too early after having a child, where they're not productive, they're a little bit tired, as you could imagine, and they're not really in it. And what we see is about a third of mothers without paid parental leave will quit their jobs within a year. Paid parental leave is associated with better health outcomes, both for the mother, lower postpartum depression rates, higher vaccination rates. Kids are getting checked up at the doctor because employees have sick days and time off to follow up with that. And so we're trying to provide a solution to the lack of paid parental leave benefits, because ultimately it's a financial problem for employers, and it's financial why they're not offering paid leave.
Yeah, I mean, you make a really excellent point that the value proposition is, and we could talk about the insurance carrier's value proposition, but there's a value proposition for the employer here as well. You mentioned retention and health outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
What has been your reception when you go and talk to employers? Why are they buying? And who do you typically sell to within the employer?
Yeah, employers are really interested in this now because employees really are starting to demand paid parental leave. And we're really seeing it from the father side, because historically fathers haven't had paid parental leave of any length, let alone a full 12 or 16 weeks. And then the LGBT community, because they have higher rates of adoption. And these are typically not covered under traditional maternity birth mother leave programs, and employers are now looking for benefits that really attract talent. And so you have the combination of demanding for fathers as well as employers looking for new leave. This is a benefit that really drives retention and new hires, and employers are really looking for something that looks and feels like a lot of the other programs that they already know and use, like short-term disability or their dental and vision, and provides the skill set that they need out of the company. That was not good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like it provides a value to their employees that they want to make sure that their employees feel like they can have a family if that's part of, that time with the company. I was just thinking as you were saying that there really are some broader, bigger market trends at play here. I'm a big follower and big fan of Serena Williams and Alexis Ohanian,
Hmm.
who just had a daughter 2 years ago, and now Alexis is a advocate for paid parental leave through his venture capital firm and subsequent businesses. He's the founder of Reddit, for those that don't know, married Serena Williams. So a heck of a power couple to begin with. But you're right, there's even some celebrities taking up the cause and saying this is good for business, who have either built their own businesses or invested in other businesses. It seems to be a topic du jour. What's the underlying reason for that, would you say? Is it generational? What's driving that?
I think it is definitely generational. And I think as we're talking about women in the workforce and getting more women into C-suite and on boards, you need to go down the career ladder and see what's stalling their career progression. And the lack of paid parental leave is the number one driver, because a third of women quitting without paid parental leave is a massive number of women leaving the workforce. And women with access to paid parental leave, when they've had their first child, are more likely to be in the workforce 5 years after having that child than women without it. And it's providing that access to paid parental leave that enables them to stay in the career force, remain productive, and continue to climb the ladder. And importantly, studies have shown that fathers who have access to paid parental leave of equal length of 12 or 16 weeks, it actually benefits the mother, because he can stay home and pick up the slack. And then oftentimes women will actually go back to work sooner. So they may not take the full 12 weeks because the father is there to pick up some of the slack. And so when we're talking about equality, we can't really have that conversation without discussing some of the major drivers that hinder women in the workforce. And I think this is probably the easiest one to solve, because it's literally just, you can put money toward the problem and significantly improve the outcome versus so many other the issues that women face in the workforce.
Yeah, and it goes back to the fundamentals of pooling the risk of and the product of insurance, right? Like what we do is provide safety and security and pool risk across a broad number of people so that we can collectively sort of perpetuate a level of safety and a level of security across society. It strikes me that this is a new let's call it risk in quotes, right? It's a
Hmm.
new risk or a new loss. I don't know. These all sound like awful ways to describe childbirth, but
Yes.
I don't know. Maybe you have a better way of describing it in insurance terminology. So let's go there. Let's talk about why is this the best insurance product, and how are you creating an insurance product from it?
Yeah, it's really like you mentioned, going back to that risk pooling. And what we've seen is you have very low levels of exposure among certain workforces in any given year, but then the next year you could have very high level of exposure. And so that the need to even out and streamline those expenses and that risk is really important. And risk pooling does a phenomenal job of that. And we're really looking at employee census data when we're talking about underwriting and what is the average risk and the individual level of risk, because as we see in the auto insurers trying to predict risk, employees are planning to have children. If
Mhm.
we can figure out exactly what those risk factors are that drive, that allows us to understand each individual's risk of having a child in the next 12 to 36 months, that significantly reduces the risk and improves our ability to understand the pool over time in a way really no other insurance product can, because there's a level of randomness that's substantially reduced here.
Yeah, it strikes me, if I were to like be self-critical of this idea though, that people who work with a lot of millennials or younger people in a hip new startup might end up
Mhm.
paying more.
They could end up paying more. If you have a very young workforce, you're going to inherently pay more because you have very high exposure. Like you have a bad driving record, you're a higher risk. But by pooling that risk, we can drive down some of those expenses.
Yeah, and somebody was going to pay the cost at some point. It's just
Hmm.
put that weight on the mother in the moment of having a child, or do you collectively decide this is in the best interest of our company to care for our mothers in that moment?
Yes, exactly. And going back to the understanding the individual risk, you may have 130-year-olds in your 100-person company. But if they all of them have two children already, they may be very, very low risk of having children. So by working with that outside party that can figure out the individual risk in a way your a typical employer wouldn't be able to, we can better manage that risk for those employers.
Wow. So it strikes me that there are subsidiary or secondary products, tertiary products that you can sell. One is a better understanding of the workforce, a more sort of detailed data and demographics around who you employ, one. But two, I think we've talked about some other cases where you talk about things like life insurance or other products that you might also be able to sell when you know that somebody's going to have a baby.
Yes, a big part of what our offering is general new parent support, and we want to have a relationship with that individual employee. And one of the most important things that new parents need to do is figure out, get their financial house in order. It's something from the basics of make sure you enroll your new child to, all right, let's budget, let's buy these additional financial products, whether it's life insurance or even annuities for the grandparents. It's a huge challenge for these employees who have, you know, there's so much on their plate already and don't understand these items, that we can serve them these additional financial products that they really need, and it actually enables us to lower our premiums for the employer, especially on those higher risk pools, to expand access to paid parental leave in the front end, because we know we'll be able to make up for it by serving these much needed financial products on the back end when those employees are taking leave.
Absolutely. And it strikes me that the speed to that customer, the speed to the new mother is what differentiates folks selling to new parents, right? If I want to sell you a bond or some sort of certificate of deposit for your child's college education, for example, I might want to get to you first because as soon as you found somebody to care for that need, you don't need two different providers. And so, really identifying as early as possible who's about to have a baby and what can we target towards the demographic of having a baby, whether that's men or women. I'd imagine Target would be interested in selling their diapers through your product as well. What would you say is the size of the market? Like, have you even conceptualized all of the different sort of potential revenue streams here? And if you have, like, what are the main categorizations of those revenue streams that you'd envision?
Yes, we have looked extensively at the market, and our mission is really to expand paid parental leave to everybody out there. And that's obviously something that's applicable and universal, but it means that we're going to have to expand beyond insurance to
Mhm.
potential lending based products, especially as you go down market and you have employers who don't necessarily want to pick up the tab. So there's a lot of additional financial products that we'll launch, and we'll drive revenue through commissions of selling some of those products or generating interest on some of those lending based products. And when we look at the initial market, there are 39 million Americans in the small to mid-sized businesses. And those are the ones who are most likely not to have paid parental leave at all. It's really the largest corporations. And then in select industries where you're going to see paid parental leave on a consistent basis within the small and mid-sized market. And through talking to employers, what we've really discovered is our insurance product is almost universally applicable to the white collar workforce out there, because it's not about how much an employee earns. It's really about how hard is this employee to lose? How important are they to the business? And they could be exempt, they could be non exempt. And so because employers know how valuable paid parental leave is to these employees, they want to be able to roll this out because they know they can keep these employees. But and really, it's a question of, is this employer going to offer 6 weeks of leave at 100% or 16 weeks at 100% of pay? And that's really where we see a significant difference industry wise. And so if we take the short-term disability market as a guide, that's $6 billion on the group level. We could be a lot larger than that given how important this is to the employees, and it becomes incredibly important to the employers. And so you once these employers start to look at what other employers are offering, they need to start rolling out for their own employees to keep their employees.
Right. Yeah. Because you're creating a competitive marketplace for and driving up from the bottom up, it's sort of upward pressure on employers who maybe I applied to two different companies. One offers me six and one offers me 16. I'll tell you, my eyebrows perked up and I take serious the
Yes.
consideration of taking a job and negotiating on just the parental leave alone. So I believe the value proposition deeply. Tell us though, what, in terms of proving out the case, you're a relatively new company. Tell us where you are in your journey and what sort of guidance or what sort of customer are you looking for now to help you accelerate growth?
Yeah, we are at the very tail end of our product development cycle. We are working with Boost Insurance, and I know you had Alex on here a few weeks ago. They've been really great, and we are planning to be in market soon. We'll be filing soon in the first quarter of next year if everything goes according to plan. And so we're looking for customers to actually really finalize some of the details of not the insurance piece so much, but the HR leave administration piece, compliance and whatnot, and new parent support. What is the HR function looking for from that perspective, as well as the broker community and potential partners out there, because they're a huge portion of this our distribution channel. And ultimately, we've had a lot of great traction with some benefits agents and benefits brokers out there. And so those are really the guys we're looking for. But we've spent a lot of time talking to CFOs of many different companies to really gauge their interest, because I mentioned this is primarily financial, and there's a lot of interest and a lot of employers really excited about this, because even your gray-haired CFOs know how much of an issue the lack of paid parental leave is, because usually their wives or spouses have gone through the lack of parental leave themselves.
Yeah. Yes, their wives or spouses. I heard a really somewhat horrific but truthful story about an executive calling in the secretary and saying, "Would you use this?" And the secretary said, "Absolutely." And this strikes me as something that might end up playing out the same way. That ask any younger parent, millennial, or mom or dad, what they would prefer. It strikes me as is so obvious that it needs
Yes.
to happen. Um, well, I am hoping for the continued success of Parento. If Parento is, next year, I guess I'm curious to know what the vision includes. You're live operating, you're selling insurance products, you are working with who, and I guess what is the vision for the next 12 months?
Yeah, so we are hoping to launch in at least a dozen different states, because this is a product that doesn't exist. There's no guidance from any of the states on how this is going to work. So that's a key piece of our challenge, is getting it approved in a lot of different states. So we want to get approved in a dozen states, including some of the major ones with state funded programs. And we really want to solidify a relationship with a PEO next year. Those are the kind of the key goals beyond just direct sales and selling to just a lot of different employers. And we're really hoping to hit it hard once we launch.
Awesome. And what's PEO for the audience again?
Oh, yes. So they're the organizations that employers will outsource their HR and payroll to.
Oh, okay. So they like manage this product.
Yes. So they manage your payroll and your benefits.
I see. Okay, great. I am myself too small of a company to use a company like that probably. So I appreciate you filling in the blank for me.
Yes.
Cool. Well, Dirk, it has been a real pleasure to have you on the podcast. I think the last thing I want to really talk about and make sure that we double down on articulating is really how your product is emblematic of a much longer and much broader movement to have products that really reflect a more modern and new generation, whether that's millennials or Gen Zers or Gen Xers, their preferences. And I think Parento's a really great example where you've said the benefits align for the employer, for the insurance carrier, and for the insured to be all better off by offering a product that meets customers where they're at, rather than redesigning a product that has always existed and sort of putting a nice face on the front of it. You're saying, let's question the values of the products that we sell and ask, are they still working for the customers that we have? And if not, what more could we provide that would make financial sense across the board? Um, we maybe should have started with this question, but I think it's a great one to end on as well, which is, where did you develop an idea like this? Why did you think this was a market need in insurance? And I think it's a broader trend, at least your company, my company, ODN, both of which sort of have this mission. Do you find a lot of comrades on that journey in insurance?
No, I definitely do. I definitely see a lot of people out there trying to bring new products and new ideas to this industry, especially ones that meet the social good aspects that we're trying to attain as well. And it's you definitely see a lot of products out there tailored toward the millennials and the younger demographics, especially kind of when it comes to work and whatnot. We see that in the fertility, we see that with health and wellness products, and a general trend toward the work-life balance that millennials are demanding that we perhaps his prior generations didn't demand quite as often. And particularly around like the needs of the individual needs of each employee.
Hmm. So does that come authentically from you? I know folks can't see your video, so they have to context to know if you're a 95-year-old, old guy, or if you're a 22-year-old
Yeah.
whippersnapper. I mean, where did you get inspired by this? Are you a parent yourself, or did you observe this in an employee?
So, yeah. So this actually came out of my prior role. I used to run finance and operations for a startup that made vibrators, and
Oh,
it
wow.
was founded
You have
by
experience.
yes, and it was founded by two women, and they were making vibrators for women by women because this was a category that was predominantly male dominated, not a lot of innovation, not a lot of consumer research based product development, and they were creating products for women. And in that company running finance for them, I kind of had the first chance to really feel whether it's conscious or unconscious bias against women and their sexual health. We tried to run ads on the subway. The subway wouldn't let us run ads, but they could run ads for Trojan and these other categories. Some of our actual our workers' comp, some of the carriers wouldn't underwrite our insurance given our category. Landlords wouldn't let us rent office space. And it was
Wow.
really the first time I'd been in the position where the difference in views toward men and women, particularly around their sexual wellness, because you can advertise Viagra and what, really impacted me in a direct way because I'm trying to manage your inventory or manage our books. And all of a sudden I can't do that effectively because one ad channel gets shut down when it was working really well. And so that kind of not only changed my view, but gave me that different perspective of how challenging certain things can be toward women. And the lack of paid parental leave definitely plays into that because it has such an outsized impact on women. And I wanted to directly address that because we can't have a conversation about women's role in society without addressing the lack of paid leave for both them and fathers.
Could not have said it better myself. And it's great to have you as an ally on this journey, Dirk. Whether ODN purchases Parento in the near future or
I
not,
hope
I
so.
am watching closely to really hope and encourage you to see real success. This product really needs this, or I'm sorry, this world really needs this product. And I couldn't have said it better myself why we need it. So I'll leave your wise words to close out the podcast and say thank you, really, for the hard work that you're doing and for sharing your story here on the golf course. Thanks for joining us.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for the time.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been The Golf Course with Carrie Ann Nadeau, your host, along with Dirk Dobler, founder and CEO of Parento. Thanks for joining us, and see you next time.